Hello my fellow courtroom companions. In today's video I'm going to give you 5 signs that you might be involved with a narcissist. So these are going to be 5 signs to kind of look for to see if possibly you're involved with a narcissist. Now there are many signs that narcissists display, but for me these are sort of the 5 key ones, and I might make future videos later on the other ones, but these are ones that I think that you can spot pretty quickly to keep in mind. So just note that many of these signs will show up a little differently in each person. For example, one of the things that narcissists will do is to love bomb you, and that might be in the form of chocolate, it might be in the form of trips, it might be in the form of flowers. So each one will show up a little differently. So just keep that in mind as we go through these 5 signs. So the first one that to look for to see if you're involved with a narcissist is he charming? Now that's not to say that all charming people are narcissists, but charm is one of the big signs that narcissists display. That might show up, like I said, in love bombing. They will tell you things you've never heard before, things you've always wanted to hear. They will tell you that they love you pretty quickly. They will say things to, just make you feel really good. And some of the charm might also come in the form of like flattering texts, flattering emails. The other thing about charm as well is that they sort of move quickly through the emotions. So this person might begin to tell you very early that they love you, or they might want you to stop sort of seeing your friends because they just want to spend so much time with you. And that moves really quickly, more than a normal pace would be. Normal healthy relationships don't move fast like that. So they might just really be very charming and tell you all these things to make you think, oh my gosh, you found your Prince Charming, but in reality you haven't. As part of their charm, they might also be a smooth talker. So they will say very slick things. They will people around you might think that you are the luckiest person in the world to have found this person because he just says all the right things at all the right time. He might also be that life of the party, very charming at a party, so you'll be proud to bring him along because people will just, see you and be very envious of you because he's just that charming. One of the other things that he or she might do is send you gifts, and you will be so appreciative of those gifts, and it might be flowers or candy or cards or jewelry, something of that nature. But be on the lookout for when and how he does that. And so I'll give you a prime example of something that might seem charming at first, but when you sit back and analyze it, you just go, that's a little strange. So here's an example. I was out of town on business, and my previous partner came with me, and this was many, many years ago. And he stayed in the hotel while I went to work, and I was working very late at night with a group of people. It must have been 8 or 9 o'clock at night, and a flower delivery person came by and delivered flowers to me in front of all of my colleagues. And while that might seem very nice and kind, and oh my gosh, I found my Prince Charming, but when I sat back and analyzed it, it wasn't about me. The flowers weren't really for me. The flowers were so that everyone else at the table would be thinking of him as a nice guy. That's what the goal was. So that we had an event the next day, and he was going to show up to that event with me, and everyone would be talking about him and the flowers he sent, as opposed to really having the focus on me. And it's not really about the focus on me, but it certainly ensured that the focus would be on him and nothing else. And so when you sit back and think about it, think about the ways that you're receiving those gifts. So anyway, be very, very mindful of the charm and how it comes across. And if your gut is telling you that something is a little off, pay attention to that. The second characteristic, or the second sign that you need to look for, is the gaslighting. And this is sort of an old psychological term, and it usually means that a person is trying to make you feel crazy. And with narcissists, they are not as direct or as clever as they think they are. So this is about power and control. This whole process, this gaslighting, is all about power and control. So if they can make you feel a little off balance or a little bit crazy, then that's sort of takes your defenses down, and then you're not ready for the next thing. And so that's kind of the purpose. It's all part of a bigger game. They also want you to doubt yourself. Gaslighting for me showed up in a very weird way, but I didn't know it was gaslighting at the time. So let me just give you an example. So this one particular weekend, we had a ton of stuff to do, and I just wasn't sure how we would get it all done. And so I started to jot down all the things we had to do and possibly when we might be able to do it. And I wanted to talk with my partner about, that particular weekend and how to get everything done. And so we stood at the kitchen counter, and I was like, okay, I think if we do this between this time and this at this time. And so sort of mapped out a time plan to make sure we got it all done. And so we sat there and we had this discussion, and he agreed to everything, which was also unusual because he wasn't very agreeable most times. So I should have taken that as a hint. But nonetheless, we agreed to how the weekend would go. And then that weekend, none of it played out the way we had planned. And so I was very frustrated by the end of the weekend, and I brought it up to my partner, and he said, I don't know I never agreed to that plan. And it made me feel a little bit off balance because I know I stood in the kitchen, I know we agreed to it, but it literally made me feel like I had lost my mind a little bit. But in reality, that he never was intending to do anything that he just agreed to, but wanted me to feel that he never agreed to it. So it made me doubt myself a little bit. But the more he did that, the more I caught on to, okay, this is just a game. There's no point in really getting him to agree to anything because it's just a game. And so that's kind of how gaslighting might show up. Here's another example. Your partner, if he's about trying to gaslight you, he might do this. He might, when you're asleep, take your car and move it from the garage to the driveway. And then in the morning, before you wake up, he'll put the garage door open. And then at some point when you're downstairs, maybe in the living room or the kitchen, perhaps making breakfast, he'll open the garage door open the, the door that goes from the house into the garage, and he'll say, why did you leave the garage door open and why didn't you pull your car into the driveway? And you'll think to yourself, well, wait a minute, I know I pulled into the driveway, and then he'll stand there and make you feel like you're crazy. So it could happen in all kinds of different ways, this gaslighting. So you have to just be really careful. If you start to see a pattern of behavior like this, you just have to start writing it down so that you can then have irrefutable proof for yourself that this is just a game. So if you think that this is happening, that's my recommendation. Start writing things down and see if there's a pattern of behavior. Another way that it might show up, he might tell you, not write to you, he might tell you, hey, the kids' game starts at 1 o'clock, so I'll meet you at the field, for example. And you show up at 1 and you see that the game is half over. And then he'll blame you for being late, and you'll say, well, you told me it was 1 o'clock, and he'll say, I never told you it was 1. Why would I tell you it was 1 when clearly the game started at 12? So just be really careful how that gaslighting might show up for you. It's very vicious, it's purposeful, it's deliberate, and it's used as a way to make you feel off kilter, off balance, just to make you sort of feel like you're crazy. So if he can get your defenses down in that area, then he's able to abuse in another way. So that's the second way. The third sign that you might be involved with a narcissist, if there is a sense of control about your partner. And so it might start out very subtly, it might start out very deliberately, but just be on the lookout for control. Let's say you are trying to make arrangements with your partner, and you say, I'm available at 6, I can meet you at 6. And then he says, well, I can't meet you at 6, but I can meet you at 6:15. Perhaps that might be true. You might not be able to get there till 6:15. But if you always find yourself in a place of suggesting a time and he always chooses a different time, that might be an indicator that he's trying to remain in control. And in my experience, narcissists want to control in every area that they can, even down to you want to send him an email and he wants you to send him a text. I mean, it goes down to that very minute level. And so I'm just always mindful, and it doesn't matter if I'm dealing with in a professional way or a personal way. I always look for it as a sign if it becomes a pattern. The fourth sign that you might be involved with a narcissist is that if you find that your partner is not able to meet you where you are emotionally, that's a really huge sign that you're dealing with a narcissist. And here's how I like to explain it. A narcissist is, if you think of it like an earthquake, in a narcissist's head, there's been a real big earthquake in the middle of his brain, and he's on one side and his feelings and emotions are on the other side, and he can't access them. Even though I'm using the earthquake analogy, if you think about it like that, it makes total sense, because something happened in their childhood that traumatized them, whatever it is. There's some kind of trauma that created this narcissism, and he was cut off from his emotions. And so what narcissists do is they try to pretend to have emotions. So they watch other people and how they react to situations, and then they try to mimic those emotions in their lives. And what ends up happening is it's not used appropriately, so they might misuse emotions. And so let's say you're really upset about something at work, and you're really emotional about it. Perhaps you had a fight with a coworker or something like that. When you go to tell your partner about it, he can't access the emotions that you're describing. He doesn't know what it's like to truly feel being in a fight with a coworker, because the way he would experience that, or she would experience that, is just a fight. There's no feeling attached to it. They have no feeling or empathy for another human being. So they themselves don't know what it's like to feel being upset about a fight with a coworker. All they know is they've had a fight with a coworker. So when you try to explain that you've had a fight with a coworker and you're really upset and you're hoping your partner can meet you there and empathize with you, he's not going to be able to do it. You're going to be left feeling that he doesn't get it, that he brushed it off, that he doesn't really understand you, and you're not going to get very much from that interaction. In fact, you will walk away from that interaction maybe feeling even worse than you did when you went in. And that's a sure sign that you might be dealing with a narcissist. They just have no ability to meet you where you are. Another example of this kind of not being able to meet you where you are, let's say you have a friend who is having a difficult relationship and they're really sad, and you all cry together. Let's say it's two women, they're best friends, and they're really upset because the one is going through a really hard divorce. If one of those women goes home and they have a narcissistic partner, and when they start telling the story of the friend is having a hard time and starts crying, that narcissist might cry as well, and it might feel like those emotions are inappropriately displayed. Maybe the cry is too loud, or the cry is, they're crying with no tears. And so you need to be mindful that a narcissist is not able to display emotions in the same way, and it'll feel weird to you. So pay attention to how it feels when your narcissist is either showing emotion, showing a feeling, and what it really feels like for you when you see it. Because looking back, I can pick up on, I've only saw my previous partner cry one time, and it was so loud and it was so abnormal that I actually was stopped in my tracks thinking, what was that? It just didn't feel right. And looking back, I should have really paid attention to that, because it was inappropriately displayed. The fifth sign, and I think the most important sign that you might be dealing with a narcissist, is that, in my experience, narcissists lead a double life. So here's an example. If your narcissist tells you or shows you that he volunteers at an animal shelter, and then he volunteers at a nursing home, he's going to tell you that he goes to church, and he's going to show you that he goes to church all the time. He might even be involved in many, many church activities. People at church may view him as a leader. He might also tell you about all the wonderful acts of service he does for this family member or that family member. He's like putting on this big display of how wonderful and how nice he or she is. It's a big production. And you might think, my goodness, how has this guy remained single, or how's this young lady remained single she appears to be such a wonderful human being. I mean, almost like Mother Teresa. And so that's like one area that they show you. But over time, that mask that has been displayed of being like this super wonderful human being begins to fade, and you start to notice things. So let's say you start to notice that, wow, he's got some addictions, right? And you notice he's drinking a lot or gambling a lot. Or you start to see that he's cussing a lot, for example. Or let's say that when you start dating him, you notice he's not really going to church like he said he was, or that he is going to church, but then he talks poorly about everybody in church. Or you say, you know, you haven't been volunteering with the animal shelter. Have you stopped doing that? And he might give you some excuse, but pay attention to that, because if your gut is telling you to ask him about that, then that means that the mask is starting to fade away. He might also begin to tell you about previous relationships that he's had, and he might talk poorly about his previous partners in a way that you think is very degrading, say to women. Or you find out that maybe he's been arrested a few times. So narcissists love to just present this picture of themselves as superhuman beings, like that everybody loves them, they're involved in all this charity work. But then when you start to know them on a very personal level, you begin to see that those two things don't match, what he's telling you versus what his actions are. And that is a classic sign that you're involved with a narcissist. So be on the lookout for that. So anyway, those are just 5 quick signs to be looking out for. If you're starting to get the feeling that your partner is displaying any of these signs, I would encourage you to start keeping a journal of the behaviors, of the things he says, see where his actions don't meet his words, and start to really be very transparent with yourself that, hey, something is not quite right here. Thank you so much for stopping by, Courtroom Companions. Please leave a comment if you like this video, and if you want to see different kinds of content, please do leave a comment and hit that subscribe button, and I'll see you next time.